I'm here at Victor Newmarket. We've just heard from Transport Minister Michael Wood and Environment Minister James Shaw about the new fee-bate and scheme that's coming online soon for electric vehicles and high-emitting vehicles in the New Zealand market. So if I look down at my notes, this is fairly fresh. We are going to see from July 1 a subsidy of $8,625 for new electric vehicles, $3,450 for used electric vehicles, and lower amounts for plug-in hybrid vehicles. Conversely, from January 1 next year, we will see penalties for high emitters, and we have some examples here, including that for a Ford Ranger, we'll see a fee of $2,780 on a new vehicle, and for a Mitsubishi ASX, a fee of $540. Those are kind of at two extremes of the range. There's a broad spectrum between of what vehicles can be charged. So this is going to be really interesting to see how this comes in. There are a few things that have been tagged to it. There's work to be done, and there is now an industry consultation group that's being put together to discuss this scheme. But I'll leave it to the ministers and members of the industry to explain after this a little bit more about what their take is on the scheme. We should note the industry has welcomed this announcement strongly so far, and we'll be having more information on that on our websites over the next few hours and coming days.
The discount will work hand in glove with the Clean Car Standard that we introduced earlier this year and will take effect from 2022. That scheme encourages importers to bring cleaner cars into New Zealand's fleet. This policy will support Kiwis to access those clean vehicles at a cheaper price. We'll need to work with the sector to make sure that vehicles are available to Kiwis and to help us develop policies to make this happen. That is why I'm also announcing that I intend to set up a clean car vehicle sector leadership group in the coming weeks. The main role of the leadership group will be to provide a forum to bring ideas, opportunities and challenges to the table and to develop a clear plan with targets for how New Zealand moves forward with an ambitious plan to clean up our vehicle fleet. The group will also discuss emerging issues and help to solve coordination problems in the sector.
This has been quite a long time coming, as many people have been pushing us to take really strong action on climate change. The last time that there was carbon dioxide in the atmosphere in the concentrations that there are today, there were palm trees growing in Antarctica. Just to give you a sense of where things are at and the urgency with which we have to deal with our carbon dioxide emissions. In Aotearoa, much of that has come from our transport fleet. And our transport emissions as a country have been the most rapidly growing of any sector of the economy. So dealing with the energy that we use to get around within our cities and between our cities is one of, if not the most urgent of all of our climate change challenges. And the Climate Change Commission this week, as Michael said, has really laid down that challenge in terms of the scale and the speed with which we need to arrest our transport emissions.
Members of Drive Electric are delighted to see an incentive up and running alongside new emissions standards announced some time back. Most importantly, this announcement says to global car manufacturers, New Zealand is serious about EVs. We're really looking forward to seeing their response in the form of new ranges and new models, perhaps including utes eventually. There were 709 EV registrations in May, which was the second highest month after March this year, so it's sort of clear that momentum is building. However, we're going to need hundreds of thousands of EVs on our roads to meet the climate targets, not thousands. But we expect this new incentive, alongside the emission standards, to be a step change, and I urge all car companies and importers to take advantage of it.
Sure, so you're right that the 1st of January 2022 is when fees will apply from. That's because we do need to develop legislation to bring in that regime. The maximum fee that will apply to the very dirtiest vehicles that emit over 250 grams of CO2 per tonne of emissions will be $4,500 plus GST, and it will be a sliding scale depending on the emissions profile of the vehicle.
It's $4,500 a year.
No, $4,500 on the purchase price of the vehicle. We're sending a message to disincentivise the dirtiest vehicles, but it's not an annual price. One important point to note about the scheme is that it is self-sustaining. So in Budget 2021, $300 million has been injected into the scheme. The money that comes in from the fees will be recycled to pay for the discounts of people buying the cleanest vehicles. And at the end of about a 10-year period, that $300 million loan will be repaid to the Crown. Further to that, one of the important points about this policy is the analysis very clearly shows that it's a net positive economic impact for New Zealand. New Zealand will save money out of this because we all use so much less fuel and have to import less fuel. That if we don't move forward with policies like the Clean Car Standard and the Clean Car Discount, New Zealand will become a dumping ground for the world's dirtiest vehicles. At the moment, we have one of the dirtiest fleets coming into our country because of the lack of a standard to date, and we're resolving that. And as other countries move forward with policies like these, and also with policies in some cases where internal combustion engine vehicles are actually being banned from certain countries from 2030 onwards, if we don't have the right policies in place, our fleet will get dirtier, not cleaner. We're not going to let that happen.
Is this rebate amount enough, to service low-income families and low-income earners?
Look, this will make a real difference to Kiwis who are looking to buy a new vehicle and to buy a clean vehicle. We are specifically trying to target it to vehicles that aren't at the very top end, so there's a cap of $80,000 on vehicles that the discount will apply to. As I said, some of the cleanest, cheapest electric vehicles like Nissan Leafs are now moving down into a very affordable range, about $10,000 for a used Nissan Leaf, and we are continuing to see those prices becoming more competitive. But absolutely, a discount of, by the time you bring in GST, of over $8,000 is going to make a very significant difference to people looking at their choices. And the modelling that we've put together indicates that by the end of this year, this policy will support, we reckon, the purchase of about 1,100 additional clean vehicles, and in its first full year of operation, an additional 19,000 clean vehicles into the fleet. So yes, it will make a real difference.
Just to run on to that question, I've got a question from Māori Television. They're asking, how are you going to assist Māori to make the switch to eco-friendly cars? They'll be less likely to afford them, so what's your solution?
Well, this policy certainly will help because it will make them more affordable. And as we move forward year by year, we expect electric and hybrid and clean vehicles to become more affordable as a result of this policy and as a result of greater supply. But we're also going to do further work. And as Mike said before, a really important part of the sector leadership group is going to be engaging with communities to make sure that we ensure that clean vehicles are accessible to all parts of our community. We're at a point of transition, and we're going to have to work through these equity issues in the transition. This has been noted by the Climate Change Commission. It's been noted in He Kina Te Kokopara, our discussion document from the Ministry of Transport on the transition. And we're looking forward to working with groups like, for example, the Akina Foundation, who are currently working with the Manukau Urban Māori Authority to develop new ways of people accessing clean vehicles. Maybe it won't be ownership, maybe there'll be social leasing schemes, for example, to get these vehicles to all parts of our community.
Have you got any projections in terms of how much you'll expect uptake to increase by as a result of these incentives?
Well, yes, that's right. We do have some initial modelling there, and as I say, for this year, and that's just July through to December, we expect an additional 1,100 clean vehicles over and above the norm will come into the fleet. And in the first full year of operation being next year, an additional 19,000 vehicles is the estimate. We're very, very clear that this scheme's going to be an important part of the transition and will have a tangible impact. But we do have a level of confidence that by working with the sector, we can ensure sufficient supply. Bear in mind, we're not talking about changing the overall supply overnight. This is a scheme which will bed in over a number of years. But for example, in Japan over the last 10 years, there have been 10 million hybrid vehicles which have been produced. So we do believe that there is access out there into the international markets if we do the work and coordinate together to make sure we get the supply here. And that was the point of the Clean Car Standard, in part, that we announced earlier this year. Before then, New Zealand was one of only 3 countries in the OECD without a standard. And so our importers didn't have a point of leverage to say to the car manufacturers, we need you to bring in the stock. Now they can say to them, we've got government policies which require us to bring in a cleaner fleet, and I think that's going to be significant.